Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to come first to describe what many of you, some of the speakers this morning said already, as an imperative, which we tend to forget. And that is that our globe is interconnected, is one. In fact, our globe resembles, and I like to compare it to a brain. It is a system which cannot be separated into different sections. It is interconnected through the synapses. It's the same water, the same air. The people are interconnected through thousands of years of migration. So we are one. And that, in our world of disruption, dispute, political upheaval, wars, and conflict, tends to be forgotten. Now, I have titled this session today, my session, From Crisis to Opportunity. And here is something what is also very dear to me, is what if we change the narrative? If we stop talking about poverty as a problem rather than an opportunity. The World Bank says 3.5 billion people are below the poverty line on our globe. 3.5 billion people who seek nothing else but to be part of the system. What if the 3.5 billion people who are today living in poverty are transformed into what we could call prosumers, producers and consumers? What if we look into disadvantaged regions of this world which seem poor, disconnected, as territories of opportunity and the future? And that occurred to me while visiting yesterday Dubai from here. And it occurred to me that this place, this region, the Emirates, developed into future within a few decades. How did that happen? On paper, 40, 50 years ago, this was sand. Water, sand, and a few people trading. Nothing. And today, this is the world of our future. So what if we look at our globe and those regions which are today desert, sand, arid zones, or not developed at all, as the territories of the future? We have heard the figure as well of 350 million people last year or so in need of humanitarian aid. Well, yes, it's a significant portion of our world, but yet these are people who again will move forward and can move forward if equipped with the right resources. Now, what means resources? Well, we always talk about money. We talk about the financing. We have heard that today from the United Nations, appealing for more money. Isn't there enough of money on Earth? Isn't there enough of financing mechanisms on Earth? Isn't there a possibility to move towards innovative financing rather than the system we have been applying to respond to crisis in moving money from here to there, spend it, and then we're asking for new money. Isn't there a possibility to invest in our future through hedge funds, through stable coins, through all the various mechanisms the financial experts know better than me? Bring those people to the table. Make money with money. And so, and I give you here a very concrete example in terms of disaster response. The funding gap in the response to humanitarian crisis. According to the UN, about $25 billion last year. What is that money for? What are the expensive response sectors which require a lot of money? Shelter. The shelter sector, when disaster hits, people need shelter. As an example, the UN has been appealing for $3 billion and received $1. Isn't there an opportunity to invest into the shelter sector through the industry, through the private sector? Those producing, in fact, the materials needed, investing into the future of shelter. Emergency shelter is one. Moving into real estate is the next step. And that can be accelerated. And as an example, back in 2013, I was managing the Al-Zatari refugee camp in Jordan. One refugee camp. We did invest through humanitarian funds, including the UAE, about $100 million into emergency shelter. Who was providing the emergency shelter? A number of companies. First of all, we could have reduced that amount into investment in durable, sustainable structures. Secondly, we could have asked the shelter sector to invest in its own market. One way to deal with this. What are the other sectors requiring a lot of financing? Food and nutrition, health and water. These are the big four: shelter, water, health, when a disaster strikes. So one of the actions required is financing, moving away from just spending money, investing in funds, bringing the experts together. Secondly, what comes across in all the disasters is that we don't seem to know where our resources are. Resources, local resources, global resources, international resources. And as an emergency manager, I've been standing a lot of times in front of populations which we could not serve. However, discovering that in fact the resources were available, but we didn't know where they were. So in here, creating a full inventory, mapping the resources we have, is an important step in that direction. Mapping out where is the money, where is the knowledge, the skills, what capacities are within the institutions. That, for me, has become one of the first measures to respond to crisis. And we can take that further. We can take that to development. Here, I've been working very recently on a project in Tunisia, where I live. And it was about having access or providing access to vulnerable youth and sections of society to services. And while on one hand there was very little within our project to provide those services directly, we were able to map out all the social institutions available in that country, in Tunisia. We found 25,000 providers of counseling, of support, of assistance, and in interconnecting those providers, we could respond and answer to the needs of the people in a better way. 24/7. Female victims of domestic violence, drug addicts, people in conflict with young people in conflict with their family, people disrupted from their social networks, people who had left the country had come back. In simply interconnecting the available resources in Tunisia, we could have people access these services without any delay. And there was no need for any additional resources. So we must be moving forward in, on one hand, recognizing and measuring the requirements. Let's not call them needs, but let's call them opportunities. Let's them be connected to the resources which do exist. And there may be global resources and there may be local resources. The World Bank and the African Development Bank are currently carrying out a mapping of the access to energy on the African continent. 600 million people have no access. It's a very detailed mapping which will provide, in fact, a roadmap for investment into energy. 600 million people to be connected. It's a need, but at the same time it's an opportunity. I work for an energy company, renewable energy. We see that as an opportunity. So instead of looking at it as a negative event, we look at it as an opportunity. So turning around the requirements on the globe into recognizing that there is, especially for the private sector and for the public sector, a possibility to invest, that's for sure one of the ways forward. Building that, what I call switchboard, that brain of measuring locally, nationally, internationally, connecting the lines like in our brain, like when a child begins to walk and to speak, that connection is our future. And that's what the call for action is. Innovative financing to supply when disaster strikes, building the global network, building the switchboard where cables are put together, where connections are established, where a very vibrant, agile connectivity develops. That is what we are looking for. Thank you very much.